Can my investors transfer their shares? One of the most important issues, and this is an attorney-related thing, so what I'm giving you here is not legal advice because I'm not an attorney. But one of the most important things about syndications, funds, and the other kinds of structures is that they're based on securities. Securities are where you have an active party and a passive party. And there are very strict rules about how securities work. And the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, oversees all of these activities. So there is no fooling around. So you have to have an attorney involved in this process if you're going to let people transfer their shares. And basically, here's what has to happen. Number one, the government gives us an exception or an exclusion from the registration under the Securities and Exchange rules. And in order to do that, we have to sell to certain kinds of investors, or we have to maintain certain kinds of accounts, ratios of people. We have to have certain documentation about who our investors are. So if you raise a bunch of money and then people just start exchanging their shares to a whole bunch of other people, you don't know who's going to be in your deal. You could end up with a bunch of people who are not qualified to be in your deal, and your whole exemption could be blown, which would then be bad for all of the other investors in your transaction. So your documents have to be very clear that you can just not willy-nilly move your shares to anybody that you feel like it. Now, that being said, it's rather investor unfriendly to not let them transfer their shares. And we've done videos on what investor friendly and unfriendly is. But it's unfriendly to the investors to not allow them to transfer their shares and get out of the deal if they want to. So you have to give them some mechanism for doing that. So there's a couple different things that happen. One, if somebody wants to, let's say, move their shares, grandma, grandpa want to give their shares to the grandchildren, we always allow that. If they want to just transfer it to the kids because it's part of an estate plan, that happens sometimes. It's not uncommon. The other thing is, let's say somebody just wants to get out of the deal. That's a totally different discussion for many reasons. One is, let's say that one of your investors says, hey, listen, my next door neighbor wants to buy my shares. Can I sell it? You say, I don't care. Okay, the guy's accredited or whatever he is, fine, move the shares. Well, it could turn out that this investor is the most cantankerous, hard to get along with, difficult person that you've ever met. And that just wouldn't turn out to be somebody that you want to have in your deal. So there are ways of dealing with this. Number one, you might want to approve these transactions when they're not part of an estate planning arrangement. That's what we do. Secondly, you might allow people only to transfer the economic value of their shares, not the voting part of their shares, so that somebody who is boisterous or otherwise not somebody you want to have around, they don't have any influence really on what happens. So there are a few ways to deal with this. All of these transactions must be facilitated by an attorney, typically a securities attorney who knows how to manage and maintain these things. There could be tax ramifications. If somebody's international, there could be time frames on when they're allowed to move their shares. So there are lots of considerations that you have to keep in mind. You don't have to remember all of them because this is what attorneys do for you. But once you have a fund and somebody wants to move their shares around, you absolutely have to have an attorney facilitate this transaction. Make sure you do that. And this is a great business. Just go out and stake your claim.